Here we are at the March 13th City Council meeting. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll move on to letter B, which is approval of the consent agenda. However, before we approve it, I'd like everyone to strike motion number 4, please. The approval of the 11/28/18 City Council meeting. And then I would like a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda without number 4.
Second.
Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Down to letter C, which is an introduction from the Anoka County Sheriff's Office, introducing the Columbus deputies. Commander Brian first. You want to do the honors, please?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. If you'll indulge us, we got more than just Brian tonight. But
All right.
for the record, my name is James Stewart, and it is my distinct privilege to serve you as your sheriff in Anoka County. And with me tonight is, I was going to say is my right hand, but he's literally at my right hand, is Chief Deputy Kevin Helwig, and certainly know Commander Brian First, who is not just a commander with our office, but acts as the liaison for the city of Columbus. And so the way we often describe that for some of our newer contract partners is the person who acts as your police chief for the city. Our main purpose in being here tonight is to introduce you to the rock stars who actually make the magic happen in our interactions with the city, and that would be our deputies that will be meeting shortly. But just prior to that, I just wanted to kind of give a snapshot or a quick overview on kind of some of the services that we provide. We've been providing services to the city since, well, it wasn't a city at the time, but I was going to say since 1857 is when we began patrolling this community, and that was when the sheriff's office was established. And as my team have heard me say, for those keeping track, that's the year before the state was a state. So we've been around for a little while. We began providing exclusive law enforcement contract services to the city of Columbus in 1987. And so we've been proud of that partnership and that relationship ever since. I began my own career with the Sheriff's Office on Valentine's Day, 1994, and began patrolling these streets around that time as well. And as we were just discussing, it certainly changed quite a bit, and it continues to grow, but the people continue to be near and dear to our hearts, and so we appreciate that relationship and that partnership very much. And so as we continue to move forward, just kind of for perspective, the Sheriff's Office has 6 different divisions within the office. If you're not familiar with us, I really encourage you to come out and either give me a call, and I'd be happy to give you a behind-the-scenes tour, or we'll grab a cup somewhere. If you ever have questions, we want to make sure that you understand we're here to be available to you any time of day or night. So don't be bashful about those things. But within our 6 divisions, we provide a wide array of services to all of Anoka County. Our patrol division is certainly the most visible in this arena, and that is basically our police services division. And we provide those law enforcement services for 8 of the 21 communities of Anoka County, also giving us the largest police department, although we really pride ourselves in being able to be community specific, and we work very closely with each community to make sure that your individual needs are met and that we understand those needs. And through our liaisons, we make sure that if you have questions, you get answers, and if you have any specific things that you want done, that we're going to follow up on those as well. And so I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I really just wanted to be able to have some FaceTime. I haven't met everybody yet, and it was nice to be able to meet everybody and to see some familiar faces, and throw myself on the mercy for any questions or comments or anything that we might be able to answer for you over here before we introduce the deputies.
Anyone?
Hey, Chief, did I miss anything?
No, I think you've pretty well covered it. Kevin Helwig and I started with the Sheriff's Office back in '98, so I've been here 21 years this week now. And about 10 years ago, I was a liaison for Columbus for several years, and come through here every day on my way in, way back. So I get to see a lot of Columbus on a daily basis. So good to be back.
That brings us to you, Commander.
And as most of you know, Brian First, Commander, and able to be your liaison, and have been in that role for several years now. And so I've been also with the office since 1998, and prior to that, had 10 years of law enforcement within Anoka County in the city of Columbia Heights. So, yes, that makes me old. They remind me of that all the time, but,
I can't say anything.
but you probably really didn't want to meet us tonight, so the deputies that, as the sheriff described as your rock stars that are providing the service for you, are both somewhat familiar faces to Columbus. Peter Grover is one of your deputies. He's been with our office for 6 years, and of those 6 years, 4 of them, or this is his 4th year as a Columbus, as the contract car. So that's improved the, what's that?
Can I have him come up?
Yeah.
Or at what point?
And I'll make him finish it, because that way he can give his, the rest of his bio.
Sounds good. Like Commander said, I'm Deputy Grover. This is my 4th year being in the Columbus contract, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office now this is my 6th year of service here at the Sheriff's Office. So, as far as my role here at the Sheriff's Office, I'm the deputy, and then I also do I'm an FTO, so I train our new guys who come in, and we spend about 3 months total. They go to 3 other officers as well during their time here, but they spend a good majority of their time with me, so that's always fun to have the new guys and show them the ropes out here. And then I'm also an operator on our UAS division as well. It keeps us fairly busy.
Good evening. I'm Deputy Chris Yantos. I have been with the Sheriff's Office now for 11 years. 3 of those years have been here in the Patrol Division. This is my first year as a contract deputy with the City of Columbus. Prior to this, I spent 2 years in the Jail Division, where I was a field training officer there for the Jail Division. And then prior to that, I spent 6 years as a community service officer, where I was your community service officer for a year in 2013, I believe. Also in there, I have 12 years of service with the United States Air Force, where I'm a security forces and a combat arms instructor. Primary duties are air-based defense, weapons maintenance, weapons instruction, and I just returned from my 3rd tour in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
Good.
So that's your deputies. Do you have any questions of them or the rest of us before we move on?
I neglected to mention too, we have our dedicated deputies that work the area. Obviously, we work very hard to recruit the best, train the best, and to make sure we're providing the best services. But a big part of that, I mean, I don't think you mentioned your military status, but we have veterans, in this case, a lot of well-rounded individuals. But in addition to the deputies that are here, one of the things that is really unique with the Sheriff's Office contract is that no matter what happens here, if you have more than one priority call holding, we have 24-hour, 365-day response even outside of the dedicated contract hours. So sometimes when people hear for the first time that we have these hours of coverage, they think, oh, what about the rest of the time? We're always here, and we're always responding here, and we will send whatever resources to make sure we're getting the job done. And regardless of where we are in the county, we take great pride in being able to do that, unlike anybody else. So I just want to make sure you understand, this is our core group here, but up to and including myself, anything you need, we're going to send the cavalry to be here as a resource.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just a couple of quick notes, and Elizabeth could do this as well, but you'll see Commander First and others giving regular reports to you. We will also look at a contract renewal, I think, at the end of the year. So there's lots of things that goes on with the Sheriff's Office, including the prosecuting attorney works very closely with the Sheriff's Office on certain matters, so.
Yes, and I'm not sure I understand from our conversations earlier, you realize we have a new council. Previous councils have requested that Brian, Commander First, come in and talk with you on a quarterly basis, or he's offered reports on any matter in which you would like. So maybe some feedback to him and others on, do you want them just to come back when it's time to renew the contract? Do you want them to come out quarterly and make reports to you? Do you just want them to come out when you have issues? I think a little feedback from them would be appreciated. We, as a staff, and greatly appreciate the deputies do check in with us when they can. We like to see them daily. When they're out on calls, we kind of miss them, but we have a two-way conversation with them because we feel it's important that we trade information. So we know them well, and we do our best to pass the information back and forth. So we're happy that we have officers that are returning to Columbus, because it's always nice when they know their way around and know where we're talking about and such. So I've greatly appreciated that you came back to Columbus. So with that, maybe a little feedback to them as to what you would like to see, and when they do come back, what you want to see them report on.
I would not be opposed to a quarterly, just as you had done in the past. Anyone?
Coming to the meeting quarterly?
Yes.
I think that would be great, and I think it's really nice for the citizens to see you and hear what you have to say too. I mean, they kind of stay out of trouble. They probably don't see you very much, and it's good for them to know, you know, what you're seeing and that you're here. So that'd be great.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll move on, everyone, please, to number 8, the public hearing and discussion of the Running Aces Harness Park liquor license. And for that, I'm going to recuse myself because I do business with Running Aces. And I'll turn the public hearing and discussion over to Janet.
We need to read the notice, is that correct? Would you read the notice, please?
Yes. City of Columbus Public Hearing Notice Liquor License. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Columbus City Council on Wednesday, March 13th, 2019 at 7:00 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard as required by City Code in the City Hall located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to review a request by the licensed applicant for on-sale intoxicating Sunday and 2:00 a.m. liquor licenses. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. Licensed applicant, North Metro Harness Initiative, doing business as Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, signed Deputy City Clerk Lori Spangler, published in the Forest Lake Times on February 28th, 2019.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to come forward and share your thoughts?
Is there anyone here representing Running Aces? So if you would please come to the table.
And while you do that, Madam Acting Mayor, I will just read a brief report. I'll just hit the high points in your packet. Starting on page 2 is a memo from our office. This is a routine matter. It's the 2019 renewal of the on-sale retail intoxicating liquor license with a 2 a.m. Closing for the restaurant, card room, patio, and trout pond. What's a little bit unusual about this operation is there are areas that are licensed outside the building. That's been done incrementally over the years. Those areas are fenced, patrolled, and monitored, and that's the reason the licensed premises could be expanded. In our review each year, there's an investigation that's done in conjunction with Anoka County. Pardon me?
The Sheriff's Department.
Sheriff's Department. There have been no violations this year. Well, that's always good to hear. In addition, we've had a fair amount of discussion this year about licensing the hotel. So as a separate matter, when the hotel's closer to completion, they'll come forward with one license application for the hotel and restaurant. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Up on the overhead, you will find the licensed premise that, as what our attorney referred to. So they have the 3 different areas. A1 is inside the building, and then they have the outside area where the trout pond is. And then also there's an area for what they call outdoor dining and an outdoor apron. The area A3 that used to be an area for it was a grassy area where you could bring beverages, now under construction, and that's where the hotel is going. So at this point, this license will not be licensing that A3 area, and the memo provided for you does exclude that area from the license. And I think you both are aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, Jonathan McBride, I'm Director of Food and Beverage at Running Aces Casino and Racetrack. Yeah, so for the A3, Site A3, it is separated and will continue to be separated by a 6-foot construction fence throughout the duration of construction. So that probably won't be taken down until the very later stages. So that's kind of, the map is not 100%, but it is fenced off.
In your packet tonight, you do have Exhibit B, and those are conditions for the licensing. I just want to note, there was there's a numbering problem, so the conditions are, in fact, 1 through 12. And what I've provided for you in section 74517 also includes conditions of the license, which is part of the recommendation. So if you look under, in the last page of the memo, the recommendation is that they meet all conditions in Exhibit B. And also included under B is section 4-517.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Happy
Is-
to answer any questions, though.
Absolutely.
These don't ask the two professionals on the end there. This is basically just a renewal from last year's.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to ask if there's anybody else that wants to
Right.
testify for the
Yep.
hearing.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to testify at this public hearing? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll call for any further discussion from the council. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation.
I'll make a motion to adopt the Running Aces liquor license as listed in our agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All right, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. I think his position is safe.
Now we'll move on to number 9, the Planning Commission report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The Planning Commission held their regular scheduled meeting on March 6th. We had a discussion of Lloyd Rabine Concept Subdivision Plan. I just want to thank Mr. Rabine for this opportunity for a learning process for all our new members, because this kind of gives you a feel of how that process will happen from time to time. Our city administrator, Elizabeth, did say that not every applicant will have to do a concept plan. But this was a good start for everybody to kind of see. Because there are some extenuating or altering circumstances to go with this site, this was a good way to, for the applicant to see if this would fit in our CUP and PUD ordinances. Let's see. He does fall within the PUD flexible dimension standards at this time. Some of the highlights of the things that we discussed were the driveway access that in Anoka County, he'd have to apply for access to, the varied road frontage standard, because his lots, the way he would like to set them up, won't have our standard. And through the PUD, that gives him that flexibility. We talked about wetland delineation, and then also the possibility of drainage easement and utility easement that may be required by Rice Creek watershed. We talked about the wetland boundaries that will have to be identified on the properties and then signed with no mowing signs on them. We also talked about how these lots fit kind of the feel and actual dimensional sizes of some of the other lots in that actual neighborhood. And I think this gave Mr. Rabine a good understanding of some of the steps that he'll have to go through if he chooses to go through the application process. He also said with his surveyor that they would have to wait till the green up before they could actually do the soil borings and things. And so we won't see that application till actually more towards the mid-spring or early summer, sometime there, I think, before they can actually get that done. And of course, most of you were all at the meeting, so I think this is just pretty much a recap of what you probably understand, I think. The next thing that we had discussed were was the incomplete letter from Med Council. And our understanding from the Planning Commission is that you, the City Council, will be addressed with Hyla first, and then we will get a subsequent meeting on the Planning Commission level once you guys have kind of put those things together for us to peruse through. And last, we discussed at the city, or at the Planning Commission level, what type of direction do you think you would want to go with the IUP? Now, you made the standards change to first applicant time of 2 years. If they don't comply, or if there's something that changes, how is that going to be enforced? Is that something that you want outlined in that ordinance so that you have some teeth to go back and say, this isn't going to be a good fit for our community? So that, I mean, is that a direction you want to the city, or from the City Council to the Planning Commission to investigate that further, or try to find some pieces that you can actually use to enforce some of that? I don't know. We're kind of at a loss of what direction that went after you guys had the discussion, other than the definition of the 2 years.
So I'd be happy to respond. I've been working with Elizabeth on this. There's a couple of things. One is that the city administrator has put as one of the conditions in these new IUPs, annual inspection, which we haven't done before. So I think that that will actually help a lot in terms of ensuring compliance. And then anything that is found during those inspections will come back and will be part of what is considered for the reapplication. The second thing we're doing is we're working on taking that checklist that Hyla had, or was it Merritt? Merritt.
It was Merritt.
Merritt who had developed that, and actually creating a new application that requires much more detail, so that I think that will really help the Planning Commission and the council to address any concerns, get more information up front, and also for the applicant to really understand, you know, what we mean when we say that it needs to be invisible to your neighbors. So we'll be working on that in the next few weeks, and then hopefully have a draft that people can respond to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything further that you'd like to go back to the Planning Commission?
Anyone?
So, no?
No? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just for a moment, if we could go back to the Rabine subdivision, because the concept plan is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to give feedback, but also the council. So I think the applicant would be looking for feedback. And to set that up a little bit, and I'm sure Elizabeth will have comments as well, the PUD would allow the applicant to vary a couple of the standards. One is the amount of road frontage that the lots would provide. And the second would be to allow that existing home to continue to take driveway access as shown there. So those are the two issues I believe that came up. Oh, there's a third?
Acres.
Oh, and the acreage. They are not, they're not creating additional density, but what happens is the road frontage gets dedicated, and so the resulting lots are going to be less than, two of the resulting lots will be less than 5 acres, but they started out at over 15 acres, and so you're not seeing an increase in the allowed density. So when the PUD was created for residential development, the one direction that was very clear from both the Planning Commission and the council is that it not create an opportunity for increased density, but better arrangements of lots. And so this would result in a then 3-lot subdivision based upon those potential waivers. So if the Planning Commission or the council was kind of dead opposed, you're not taking a vote, this is just feedback, but if you were dead opposed, we would provide that information to the applicant so they wouldn't go through a lengthy application process.
Elizabeth, would you show everyone where you think the houses would be located because of the,
So this is the, you know what I mean, the 15 acres. Today, this is the homestead that's today, and they take their access, they go down 168th, there's a driveway, and then there's a house and an accessory building. The new lots would be up front. It would be, this one's approximately 3.5 acres, and I think this one is just under that. And there would be driveways coming off of Kettle River Boulevard. There's a high knoll here where I'm thinking that's where they're going to put the house. And then similarly, there's a higher area, although not as high as here on this lot. Both lots are heavily wooded in the front half, so I would say from here out. Right in here is a very low area, and there's an outlot in here from the subdivision to the north, and I think there's some flowage that kind of either goes out or in, I'm not sure which way it drains. And then there's a ditch system that kind of goes in the back part of the property. So I'm thinking that the development will be to the front of the lot. Not saying that when you put your house to the front of that, you're not going to have accessory buildings in the back. That's pretty common in Columbus, and I think they'll have the room to do that on this lot. Currently, there is an improved cul-de-sac here. So, and currently, this is dedicated right-of-way, and then this house is served by a driveway through that easement.
So this review is an opportunity for you to provide comment in a non-binding setting.
anyone have comments?
I think it's a good idea.
Shelley?
I like it.
You said originally it was 15 acres? And
It was
they're-
over that, it was 15.46, I think the surveyor told us.
But the front two lots are only 3.5 apiece?
It's 3.74 and then 3.45, and then the back acre, or the back lot would be just under 8. And then he's also required to dedicate right-of-way. So the original plat goes to the center of Kettle River, and Anoka County is requiring him to dedicate 60 feet of the 420 feet of road frontage that he has. So he's losing quite a bit of acreage. I think it's over half acre as dedication as part of the plat for roadway.
So like the discussion that you had at your work session about the Thornback Preserve, lot averaging, they want to take advantage of lot averaging to come up with 3 lots.
Right. No, I don't have any concerns with it. As you said, it really matches some of the other properties out there, so it's not going to stick out as an outlier.
Fine with it.
So do we need a motion or anything, just,
No, that's
No.
perfect. Just what you've done is what we'll give, the kind of feedback we'll give to the applicant.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep, thank you.
thank you.
And Elizabeth, you'd call those executive lots with all the trees on them?
That was, yes. During our first discussion with the applicant, he said that he was presented that these would be executive lots because they were wooded.
There we go. All right, now we'll go back to number 9, and we'll go to the Personnel Committee report. Janet, I think you're ready for that.
Okay, so we are wrapping up our interviews for Planning Commission. Our Personnel Committee, which, as a reminder, consisted of Mayor Priner, myself, and Elizabeth, met on February 20th to conduct the last of the interviews. And just a reminder, there was 4 openings that we were interviewing for, 2 that were reappointments from Jim Watson and Pam Woloski, 1 vacancy that was created when Mayor Priner was elected mayor, and then 1 vacancy that was created when Garth Sternberg submitted his resignation from the Planning Commission. We had a total of 9 applications that were submitted for these 4 openings. And on the January 23rd council meeting, the Personnel Committee put forth a recommendation to reappoint Ms. Wolowski and also to appoint Mr. Hanegraaff, which was approved by the council. So of the 9 applications submitted, 2 candidates withdrew their applications as previously reported. 5 candidates were interviewed and 2 candidates submitted applications after the committee had closed the interview period. The 2 candidates whose applications came in later were asked if we could keep their applications on file for future vacancies. So at this time, we're putting forth 2 planning commissioner candidates for council consideration. The first is Ms. Barbara Bobick, and actually both candidates are here, so if you have any questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them for you. Barb is retired from 30 years of property management. She's been a resident of Columbus for just under 3 years and has attended most council and planning commission meetings in the past 2 years. The second is Christine King. Chris is currently on the park board and intends to remain a member of that committee, at least when we asked her about that, she did. She is an industrial electrical designer and has lived in Columbus for 15 years and has been pretty much at every council meeting for the last 5 years, so she's a familiar face to many of us. Both of these candidates have been active participants in the community. They've invested in learning the issues facing our city by attending several years of council and planning commission meetings, and they both have the desire and the time to commit to this position. And then lastly, the Personnel Committee would like to express our appreciation to all the candidates, all the people who applied, and we just had an excellent pool to recruit from, so it was a pleasure to meet so many people who are interested in serving our city.
Each of the council members, I put the applications in your spot if you wanted to review them quickly. Both candidates are here. Should you have any questions for them, they'll be happy to come up to the mic and answer any questions for you. If not, then it would just be a motion to approve the appointments as presented by the Personnel Committee.
Anyone with questions? No one has any questions, and so I would like a motion, please.
Motion to approve the 2 recommendations for the Planning Commission, Christine King and Barbara Bobick.
And a second?
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Are we doing both of them at one time, or is it separate now? I can't,
I was doing both at one time.
okay.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right. So both at one time. Everyone was in favor. Anyone opposed? Then the motion carries.
Welcome.
Yeah. Do you want to stand up or anything? Oh. There you go. So ladies, get ready to work. We've got a lot of things going to take our time. Whew. All right, so now let's move on, please, to number 10, Public Open Forum. Anyone with anything to add? All right. Then let's go to letter D with the staff and consultant reports, and we'll start with the engineer report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item I had on the agenda was the 2019 street improvements, which is reclaiming the pavement on Notre Dame north of Broadway and on 181st from Broadway to Kettle River. We opened bids a week ago, for the project, and we had 5 bidders. You have a memo that outlines the results and a complete tabulation of all the bids and items. We had estimated around $507,000 for construction. The low bid was $413,874, and the high bid was $524,000, so we had some good bids. And what we're looking for at this time is two actions or two motions. One is to receive all the bids submitted, and then the second item would be to award the contract to Knife River Corporation, who was the lowest responsible bidder at that $413,874.
Where's Knife River located? You know? No?
South of Duluth,
Is it?
I don't know where their home office is right offhand.
Okay.
there is a Knife River.
They've done the last one or two projects in the city, so they've done good work.
Is that who did the one out here in Notre Dame?
They did Notre Dame.
A good job at that. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bids from these five bids from these companies.
I'll second.
Any more discussion, anyone? If not, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And how about,
I'd like to make the motion for the low bid, Knife River Corporation for $413,874.60. Accept that bid.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Then that motion carries. Dennis, may I ask you? Going back to the numbers, so your engineer's estimate was 500,000, and they came in at 413. Why? What's the big
We're
difference?
trying to outguess the contractor's bids on bituminous prices this year, so we used around $60 a ton for the base course and 62 for the wear course. They came in at 55 for both. That was biggest part of the number. And they're the process of reclaiming the pavement, they came in lower than we had anticipated as well.
So that was a nice, pleasant surprise.
Yes, so
When is Bituminous Roadways supposed to open?
this spring, I believe in the May timeframe. So they did bid on it, they were the middle number there.
All right, update and direction on the ECD 15 project.
Yeah, I provided you guys a handout. It's 8.5 by 11, so it's a little bit hard to read, but I'll put it up here, just some maps. Just a quick update, I gave a real brief update on one of the work sessions, but we went over a lot of projects that night, so. The background of this is that about a year ago, Rice Creek Watershed District came to the city and gave a presentation of ditch 15, which.
Yep.
So, Anoka County Ditch 15 starts up here by Highway 97 and runs down on the east side of Hornsby down to 145th. This map just shows kind of the overall drainage ditches in the area, just so you get a picture of the different ditches that have been here historically. This runs into jurisdictional ditch number 4, which then runs under the freeway to the west. So the Rice Creek came in and said it would be a good idea to study this area with development that is coming in this area and look at, can we do a regional plan for ponding? So not that every lot that develops has to have a pond on their property, and study this more regionally. And also approve that action, and Rice Creek offered to fund half of that cost in a shared effort. And they provided a lot of background information they already had, which is very helpful on modeling and ditch flows and other items. So a little bit of blow up of that area. Yeah, you can see in blue here is ditch 15. And the red boundary is the area that's tributary to that ditch, that drains to the ditch. It doesn't look like a very big area, but it's consistently along the east side of Hornsby, and there's a few areas on the west side as well. And anything east of that red boundary just ends up into the wetland. That's on the city-county boundary, or even to the east a little bit. The third map I had was that, the area that I just mentioned, that is between Hornsby and the freeway. Part of the area, anything on this side of the red line, does drain to the ditch gets across Hornsby. But there's a large area that's adjacent to the freeway that actually ends up going across 35 to that drainage area. So the study was for ditch 15, but we're also looking at this area as part of that study as well. And as you know, the Bear Homes is in this area here, so they've come in already and had to deal with their own ponding, which is something we couldn't wait for a bigger study. Part of the premise of the study also then is that instead of every lot that wants to develop come in and has to do their own ponding, a whole series of smaller ponds is less efficient and takes up a bigger area when you're all said and done than 2 or 3 larger ponds. And that was part of this. Looking at, the study is to look at all the developable area between 97 and 145th, and also look at the ditch alignment itself. Is there a better place for the ditch to go? Because it does bisect many of these properties on the east side here. The ditch is where it is because that was the lower area when it was created, but there's even a lower area to the east farther. So the study is looking at different options, and when it's all said and done, if it's best to put a few larger ponds on fewer parcels, then it would be an area-wide contribution. So if someone ended up, if the decision is to go with a larger pond, and then that individual might lose some of the developable area, the whole area would pay to build these ponds and improve the ditch, and there'd be an assessment so that everyone shares in it equally. So if you're in the low spot and your ground is, maybe you have some developable land, but it's a better place for a larger pond, you would still get compensated for that through the assessments for the regional ponding system. So at this point in time, last fall, we met with Race Creek and staff, and we had come up with 5 different alternates. And that's what these other drawings are. A lot of color on here. I think I wore out my ink printer. But
It's the button, it's the white buttons. Where it says document counter, that it's the zoom and the minus.
this map shows north is to the right, so here's 97. What it shows in red is potential developable land. That's, by that, it's just anything that's not wetland. And anything in green is a wetland area. I wanted to show you how much of both there was in the area, and that as you follow that's why the ditch is along this area, which was a natural low area. They put it at that time. Call this option 1A, but really what this is if every lot developed and had to put ponding on their own site, these aren't the exact locations or configurations of the pond, but they're representation of the size. So, for example, we had, like I said, we had Bear Homes come in, and there's a natural wetland low area here, but they did put their ponding back in this area where it made sense. So this is an example. If we didn't do regional ponding, this is what everyone's area would have to use up, potentially. Option 1B shows keeping the ditch where it is and trying to do less larger ponds. So this is again, just a schematic of where it Doesn't mean these ponds are going exactly in these locations, but these are the size of a pond that would need to be done for the area on this side, and there'd need to be some ditch improvements to get all this runoff down here efficiently. But this is just an option showing, again, if you could put all the water into 2 ponds, that's about the size of the area it would take up. I'm gonna come back to that one in a minute, or a little bit later. Option 2A was considering moving the ditch, getting it out of the middle of some of these properties along the easterly boundary, cutting through a little bit of a high area here, so that's not optimal. And what that would mean then is you couldn't get the drainage from these areas into the ditch directly. You'd have to have another secondary ditch along Hornsby to get the water into there, and you need some more ponding in this area. We're just looking at a couple combinations of either leaving the ditch where it is or moving it in a number of ponds. I'm going through these a little quickly, but I'll come back to them. Option 2B was again moving the ditch, but this time moving it further east where the topography made more sense, but it would be creating a ditch through the wetlands, just from the grade perspective. And then you'd also still need that ditch along Hornsby, and then this ditch would go away. That area could be filled in. Although there would be some wetland impacts there. Again, the general size of the ponding that would be required by using, say, 3 ponds instead of a dozen ponds. Option 3A was moving the ditch again, but moving the ditch to the entire ditch would be moved to Hornsby. There would be nothing over on this side. This pond would become somewhat isolated and need to probably all discharge to the wetland. There would be a significant amount of grading work needed here as well. And that could be theoretically done as part of the Hornsby Street improvement if that gets done. We had discussed this briefly, I believe, with the prior council a ways back. And at that time, we had narrowed these 5 options down to 2, which was 1B, where we leave the ditch where it is, just do some ditch improvements to get the water down in these 2 larger ponding areas. So that was 1B, and the last one, 3A, where we'd move the ditch along Hornsby Street. So at that time, those were the 2 thought to be the 2 better options out of the 5. So what I'm looking for tonight is A, give you some information, and B, either some direction tonight or take this back and then absorb it, and we can come back and discuss, are these the options that you think make sense? The next step would be to assign some cost estimates to doing this, and then seeing and spread that cost out over all the developable area. There was a couple other secondary pieces to the proposal that weren't part of this work that Rage Creek was sharing, and that is if the city wanted to turn the ditch, or accept the ditch as a city-owned, you have more control over it, but then there's ongoing maintenance. And so there was a small cost associated with that part of the study as well. But we're just focusing on the geometrics of where could the ponds go and what the cost might look like.
This plan, Dennis, is Rice Creek responsible for both ditches? So the Hornsby ditch, basically, would they be responsible, or would that be ours?
In this one, what we didn't show is that this ditch goes away then. So this is the new full ditch 15.
So where
As opposed
is because it's in the right of way then?
Yeah.
At that point. So is that our responsibility?
No, it would still be in a county ditch. It'd still be the county's county ditch. None of these scenarios are implying that the ditch is becoming cities as a whole. Separate discussion. There was a couple in the middle options where we had the ditch coming down here. One went through the east and one went down along the property line, one went down farther. Both of those would have needed that secondary ditch. The actual, what would be ACD 15 would come down and come around. That might be a city ditch then, secondary smaller. One of these two options that I mentioned, 3A and 1B, 1B leaves the ditch where it is. And, you know, individual property owners could cover the ditch, basically be a underground storm sewer type scenario, but that's not cheap. So again, information and background, but also if you had any questions, discussion, or thoughts on either any of these scenarios. Again, the optimum or the ultimate goal is to implement one of these if the city so desires, and then create an assessment for the stormwater ponding. So if you're up, say on this end somewhere or up here, your entire parcel could be used for development purposes and you won't have to eat up some of your land with ponding, but then you would contribute to one of the parcels where the ponding was going.
What do the property owners think?
We haven't had a public meeting to be part of the process.
Dennis, if you look at 1B, please. So right now, the current ditch is running through the wetlands.
Yes.
So if someone has a buyer for one of their parcels, a 20 or a 40, they could still cover, they could put that ditch in a culvert there, and then they'd have to do the mitigation.
Right, they have to work with Grace Creek Watershed District and what impacts that would have. But it could be done. There's wetlands, you know, obviously.
All around it,
Basin, so
almost.
you have those impacts. And then you'd have to design, we'd have to work with them to design the actual ditch capacity as well.
But then you also would have, if they want to use that property, if they want to fill it, they're going to have to do the mitigation and the whole bit,
Right,
regardless of,
that would be part of this. Or part
right,
of the-
that's,
Would be part of the assessment. That would be up to the individual property.
but if you're going to move the ditch out of the wetlands, or if you're going to do anything with the ditch, you might as well move it out.
So like in this, the other one that we were looking at, option
3A.
Yeah, we would, this part of the ditch, existing part of the ditch could go away, would go away.
But they would still, when they come time to upgrade their wetlands, whether the ditch is there or not, they still have to go through the
Correct.
mitigation and the Race Creek business and all of that. So if you did make it into the county ditch along the road, is it just like a regular ditch, like on West Freeway Drive, or bigger or smaller? Or?
Yeah, it would be bigger. I mean, we're trying to take them and all the drainage from any of this high ground up here, it would all be flowing down this ditch to the bottom pond, so you'd have to improve the ditch capacity. You're looking at a pretty healthy ditch section.
But that would just be big culverts under their big driveways,
Right.
and then you're done with the issue, or it allows you more use of the rest of your property.
Right, so it'd be an open ditch, but like you said, there'd be culverts under the access. Yeah, it would be, we haven't got to the level of detail, but the ditch would probably be east of that.
Anyone else have questions?
So can you provide, what was the criteria that they used to recommend those two? Was it 1A and 3? Wrote them down.
Yeah, 1B and 3A.
Yeah, why did those two come out ahead of the other options? Was it cost, or what was the
We haven't done
criteria?
the full cost analysis yet, so it was more about the fact that those other two options that were eliminated or thought of less desirable had the ditch coming down either along the east property line, cutting through some high ground, or coming down, you know, that leaves Columbus jurisdiction, that you're in the Washington County Forest Lake. You're going through wetlands, and you still had a secondary ditch along Hornsby. So we're just assuming the cost is going to be greater, but then you're also dealing with more impacts with the county authorities. We could assign, the next step would be to get your feedback on if these are the two you'd like us to go forward with and do estimates, or we could come back with estimates on all four. Probably wouldn't be a lot more effort.
Anyone else?
Do they all equally accomplish the same goal?
Yeah, the goal being to minimize the number of ponds, because larger ponds are, you end up taking up less area and they're more efficient hydraulically. So this one we're showing 3 ponding locations, and the other option, I believe,
1B and 3A, were what you said.
2 ponds, leave the ditch where it is. 3A had the 3 ponds, move the ditch adjacent to Hornsby.
I don't think the residents are gonna be like the assessments they're gonna be put on them. Like, a lot of money, I'm sure. They're already paying for sewer and water and everything else down there. And ask them to pay for this, I think it's quite a bit.
Yeah, so if we do nothing, which is an option, is everyone builds their own pond. And so then, probably at the end of the day, we can do this as a cost estimate as well, how much land is used up. The thought was you're gonna end up losing more of your own land for ponding than if you paid assessments to take care of it all.
You have to sell all the residents on that.
Yeah. The other challenge is timing. You know, we had Bear Homes come in, so they're not gonna be part of most of their drainage goes to the west, but they end up, building their own pond to get approval. So again, the study is to look at the cost and see if that makes more sense. And just by finishing the study and working with Rice Creek to do that, doesn't mean that you have to implement this, but it's give you information to see if it makes more sense. So again, a lot of information, but if you want to just take this back and come back to another meeting, or if you have some direction to save a little bit of time we've spent, that if these 2 options make the most sense, we can keep going with them.
I think we should have a neighborhood meeting, have an information session. Not if we get anybody here or not, but we're talking a lot of money.
Well, we will have it, but not until you have numbers, correct?
Right. So I guess the question is, do you want us to put numbers together on all 5 options, or narrow it down to?
I would say give us 2 weeks to talk about it. I think definitely you wanted it on the original. If they have to each build their own, what's it going to cost them? And then whichever plan of the other 2. Which one were they again? 3A and
1B and 3A.
3A and 1B?
Yeah.
So let us compare the 2. And whatever we decide is looks the most intelligent, compare that one to the individuals, where everybody has to build their own.
Sure.
And that would give everybody a good start. Because they'll have to do something. If they build anything other than what's there right now, something has to happen.
Correct.
So it's a matter of what is the least expensive and the most.
And with the groundwater levels in this area, we're finding that out when we're working on the northeast quadrant in the Hornsby Street project, that because of the high groundwater levels, you probably can't do infiltration, and so you end up doing either filtration or rate control that ends up in a bigger pond even than you could with infiltration.
And then when the water gets down to whichever way you'd go, down to 145th. And then it has, where does it go there? Under 145th into Browns Preserve?
Yeah, it gets into, that's the upper end of ditch 4. So then it goes through there. Eventually gets under 35E and 35W.
Out to Rice Creek. And where does this all start at? It doesn't start right at the edge of Columbus, does it?
For ditch 15, it actually starts right up here on the northeast quadrant. So that's the upper end of the drainage boundary. A little bit on the north side of 97, there's that drains to the south.
And then everything north of your little red line up there goes Clear Lake? Yeah.
It ultimately gets to right.
Yeah. All right, I got it. So does everybody agree that we'll take a couple weeks and compare the pictures, talk about it and see what we think? And then pencil us in some time at the next meeting, Dennis, and we'll give you an answer.
Sounds good. If you would like larger copies of that or PDFs, just let me know. Otherwise, you might need a magnifying glass on some of it. Last item I had was a verbal update on Hornsby Street North and MnDOT's design build project. Was at a meeting last week. It's called an MOT meeting, Maintenance of Traffic. It's the design build MnDOT's project, where they started up their meetings again for this year. And as you know, they did the north half of the project last year. They still have the new ramp at Highway 8 to do this year. So that flyby is going away and they'll put in a cloverleaf to go southbound. So that's one of their first efforts this year, but then also starting the second half of the bridge out here, in the diverging diamond. And then there'll be different phases from, it was about a half mile or a mile north of 97 where they ended, all the way down to the split. And you've seen the new bridge, and they'll be dropping the old bridge. I think there's one weekend in the summer where there'll actually be a detour if you're going south on 35. You won't be able to go on 35E. You'll have to go find your own way or go down to 694 on 35W. But that's only a short time period. There is this is the year not that there will be ramp closures on to 97. And they, per the contract, the contractor has 40 days maximum where he can have those closed at different time frames. And the city, we work with MnDOT, the contractor, to make sure that at least there'll be a southbound ramp open at all times. So if you want to, if you're coming from the south and you want to get off, it's not ideal, but you can go up to Broadway, turn around and come back and get off by holiday, basically. And that'll be for that up to 1 month or so period.
But that will always be open?
Yeah.
Coming.
They'll build a, they call it a slip ramp. So where the existing ramp is now, they'll actually build that over to the frontage road and use that as the off-ramp while they build the new off-ramp. And there'll be different phasing going on as they move traffic from one side to the other. And then there'll be one period as well where they'll have the movable barrier, where they'll have more lanes going south in the morning and north in then they'll move it to match rush hour.
So how many lanes would stay open?
I believe there's 2 at all times. They might have 3.
One each way?
Yeah. No, 2
Two each way.
like they did on the north half. And then that lane will move to try to create more. There might be times when there's only 1 lane coming northbound on 35E and 35W. Then those turn into 2 lanes. So there will be traffic. There will be congestion, and you'll probably see a lot out here on Kettle River.
And when do they promise to be done?
I can't make promises for MnDOT, but November timeframe
Yeah.
is the end of the contract completion,
With our bridge, the flyover and the highway, everything? should-
everything. For a MnDOT's project, yeah. And the city's project, which is Hornsby Street North realignment, and we're actually doing the work on 97 from Hornsby East, about half a mile, some lane, because we're putting in a traffic signal at Hornsby and 97. It'll be a full intersection with 2 through lanes on 97, through lanes on Hornsby, and full turn lanes. It'll be a pretty big intersection. That means there needs to be another lane and a shoulder improvement on 97. That's part of our project. And that work will likely be happening in the July, August through November timeframe.
So there'll be a stoplight at the new Hornsby, which will be lined up with the new Hornsby that's already been started.
Correct.
Then you go through the emerging diamond,
Yes.
and then where's the next stoplight?
Going
Going west.
West.
If you're coming from Forest Lake, you go through the bridge, or you stop at Hornsby, you go over the bridge.
You go through the diverging diamond, you'll hit the roundabout,
Okay.
and then the stoplight at Zurich.
So now,
There'll be stoplights on and off ramps as well. The diverging diamond has one on each end.
okay.
There'll be 2 lights on the bridge, one at Hornsby, one at Zurich, and a roundabout.
All right. Anybody else have questions? So all we have to do is hang on till November, huh?
Yes, it'll be a busy, challenging year, I believe is the word MnDOT used.
Let's move on to number 12, Attorney's Report, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just one item that came up in today's staff meeting that I thought we could get some direction on and then bring it back to you in 2 weeks. The Lackners, Tom and Mary Lackner, processed a 2-lot subdivision on Zodiac Street. And as part of that, it's typical for the city to either require improvement of the road or at least escrow for improvement of the road. And so in this case, since it was a 2-lot subdivision, the development agreement called for an escrow of $15,000. The Lackners have come back and said that's going to be difficult for them. And so is there any other alternative? The alternative that we're presenting for your consideration would be they escrow for the 1 lot, the one new lot, $7,500. And then they agree for, in an amendment to the contract, they agree to a waiver of appeal rights for an assessment if it ever comes along of the same amount. So it basically would reduce by half the amount of cash that they would have to escrow. And presumably that escrow, Elizabeth, would occur at the time they sell the lot? Is that what we're thinking?
When they sell the lot that was created, the new lot that was created, yes, when it was upon sale.
Right, so that would give them some relief. We would have some cash in hand for a road project, and then the other portion of it could be assessed. And that's for a 10-year period, so if there's no road project in a 10-year period, then the money's returned.
The waiver would have to be signed as part of the First Amendment to the developer's agreement, and it would be recorded against the property.
So we're looking for your direction if that's an acceptable resolution of this situation, which the property owners have deemed a hardship to, I guess, filing the final plat, is that right?
So, post recording the plat, yes.
Oh, post-recording the plat, got it. So,
So I have 2 questions. Is the 10-year time period from the time they post the plat or from the time they sell the lot?
the 10-year period is from the time of the development agreement, so it's already running.
So if they take several years to sell it, they wouldn't be paying anything until the point of sale, is that correct?
Yes, so the 10-year period started when the developer's agreement was signed or when the final plat was approved, and so the clock is running. So say they sell the lot in year 4, then it's due then. If they sell the lot in year 6, then it's due then. If after 10 years they don't,
Yeah,
then it's moot, then the money would have been returned anyway.
okay.
Now, the other one is, the waiver, though, is immediate. The waiver, they would have to sign immediately, and the waiver is saying that if there's a road improvement project in the next 10 years, they waive their right to appeal. That means that they would pay the assessment This probably would be below the assessment. Assessments are anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000 a lot, but it's the best guess we have for there, for that street.
And the escrow that's paid on the new lot, is that then attributed to the buyers or to the sellers?
The money is returned to whoever owns the lot in 10 years, or if it's improved, the credit is given to the new lot.
So if they wanted the 7,500 off of the new lot that they plan to sell in 1, 2, or 6 years, they would have to write that into the contract with the buyer. Well, that has nothing to do with the city.
Right, their title work would show this of record. They would see that $7,500 is potentially owed, and they make an adjustment, between the buyer and the seller.
And so if we don't do this, they have to pay 15,000. If they do this, if we decide to do it, they're allowed to pay 7,500
At the time of sale.
at the time of sale,
So they'll
at
have
the
cash
new
in
lot.
hand.
And then they're going to keep living at the other half. They're going to subdivide, one they're going to stay at, one they're going to sell, correct?
But if the road is improved, then they pay their assessment, and they can't vote no.
Okay. So no matter what, we're giving them a pretty nice opportunity to not spend the 7,500 bucks right up front.
They don't have to come up with 15,000 now, they come up with 7,500 out of the proceeds of the sale of the new lot, and then they've agreed to an assessment if ever.
So what's the downside for the city?
There's not really a downside. Our preference with all of these has been to have cash in hand. It's usually a larger development, of multiple lots, and so it's, seems to be more reasonable to ask for cash in escrow, because the developer then goes away and, and has made decisions for others about assessments. So that's been our practice, but it's not, both of these are reasonable alternatives. And I think, given the request for relief, I don't think there's really a downside to the city.
Does anyone have anything to add? Jeff? Shelley?
Not really sure how I need to put this.
All right.
I'm against what we're doing with taking money up front for assessments that may or may not be, put upon these people. I guess I've always taken the stance that I'm not a big road builder. The more roads you have, the more you have to take care of. We've had this discussion before. So I'm just a little bit frustrated because we're at this point where we have to make a decision for the Lochner's, but I don't really agree with the whole premise. I understand when someone comes in and they put in 16 lots, and they're a developer. I don't understand when you have people, I don't know how old the Lochner's are, but, 10 years is a lot of time in their lifetime. And to sit there and tie up their money I have a problem with it. So, I just want to be on record as saying that.
But I think this option doesn't tie up their money. That's what it feels like to
right.
me, yeah.
Well, it doesn't tie up, some of their money, but I guess I'm struggling with this because I don't know that I agree with the whole premise, but I just want to be on record as saying that.
And we try to be consistent with small subdivisions as we are with large subdivisions. It's easier to see the justification when there's a developer of 16 lots. But because of the difference in size, we have used these techniques for providing relief to the smaller subdivisions. But if we were to completely eliminate providing for those future road projects, then we'd have to do it small and large, or come up with at least a justification for not doing it. And so to be consistent, we've required it of small subdividers, but we've also provided relief when it's appropriate. And ultimately, it's a policy question for the council if they want to continue this practice.
Anybody else? Anybody? So what would you like a motion from us to?
Just your direction, because if generally there's consensus to do this, we'll bring back a First Amendment, so then they'll have a formal vote in 2 weeks with a First Amendment in front of you. First Amendment of the development agreement.
Because we have to amend it because they've already agreed to
They've already agreed to 15,000.
pay the 15,000. So we'll amend it down to 7,500 when they sell their first lot.
Correct.
Everybody got it?
And appeal their,
And,
they have to do the waiver.
and a waiver that they will not appeal if the road comes to be improved.
A waiver up to 7,500. If we go over that, then they would have their appeal rights for the difference.
Okay. Anybody? Danny?
No problems.
Janet?
No, I think it's, I mean, I do think we should readdress it from a policy standpoint, but from their specific, I think this is a reasonable solution. See what they say.
Jeff says yes. Shelley
I'll agree, but I want to.
would like to look
I
at
think
the
we need to look at
policy.
the policy
Right.
also.
All right, and I'll agree also, so staff?
And just one point, one of the reasons the whole question comes up is general area code requires that you take access from an improved frontage. And so, you know, they're not doing that. And so the really hard, you know, approach would be to ask them to do, you know, $50,000 of, you know, paving. And so that's where it starts, is we're looking at a code requirement for taking access from improved roadways. And this is already relief from that and a significant reduction from that cost. So again, we're trying to work with our residents who are trying to divide land and make it reasonable.
I think it'd be a good topic for a workshop coming up, Ash Grove. So put that on a
Write that down,
workshop.
Elizabeth. Love another workshop, we're gonna have to have one every week. All right.
One a month is good.
Anything else?
No, thanks for
Counselor.
that direction.
Okay, we'll have the mayor and city council's report.
Oh, did we make a motion on that last?
It doesn't require a motion since we're going to bring it back as a formal action 2 weeks from now.
But you gave us direction, so Bill will draft the First Amendment.
Jenny? Anything?
Nothing, no.
Janet?
So the only thing other than the personnel committee report is that Shelley and I attended our second Sunrise River Watershed Management Organization. I said it right this time. Meeting. You will be getting the draft of their watershed plan. I think if you haven't already, it will be coming soon because that's what we spent our time talking about.
Watershed plan or the budget? I saw an email that gave the preliminary budget, but I didn't see
Both.
anything else yet. Oh,
Both.
okay.
Yeah, you've got the budget, but the other is we were working on the watershed plan. Chime in, Shelley. You were
I
partner in,
I have
partner in
to say,
crime.
you get a gold star because they're using most of your ideas and most of Columbus's ideas.
Oh, really?
For the
Yeah.
four communities, so we really are on top of things, I guess. So.
Okay. See, they
Thank
heard
you.
me, the meeting.
Yeah, they're using your practices for the septic system to try to get Linwood and, is it East Bethel, to fall in line with that. So, yeah, you've been held up as the model in a number of ways.
Forest Lake Cable Commission met today. They hired a new sports announcer, which they needed a couple. They got two now. One has a student at North Lakes Academy as a parent. The other one's a student at the high school who said he's coming back next year because he likes doing it. He's going to, I forget what college he's going to, but he's coming back for that. They're going to offer a media productions class at the high school. They're going to be 20, 30 students enrolled in that. Paul was able to get some cameras and equipment from Savage, Minnesota, who was downsizing their cable channel. And we got that at a fraction of the cost of new. Midco is coming for a meeting May 8th, I believe, if you have any questions about Midco, who is a cable provider here. And also they mentioned that, well, I think that's it. We'll forget that.
They're coming to a council meeting on May?
They're coming to our meeting,
Oh, your
workshop
meeting,
meeting.
okay.
I mean, cable commission meeting. So if you need anything or looking for any improvements for anything, come to that, you can go to that. That's all I have.
Shelley?
That was our meeting.
Any CURP discussion?
A little bit.
Little
Can't
bit
have a
carp.
meeting with those guys without talking a little carp.
Tomorrow night, Jeff and I and Elizabeth are going to the fire board,
What time?
7, I believe, Thursday night,
Forest Lake?
in Forest Lake at the fire hall.
It's actually in the
Chambers?
No, it's called, I think it's called the Forest Lake Room or the Laker Room or something to that
First
effect.
meeting room.
I'd have been lost on my first meeting.
It's on the other, actually, the other side of the building. Fire hall's on one side, you're going on the complete opposite side.
And I got an email, I think everyone else got it too. Did you get it, Elizabeth? About the lack of a lack of what?
The computer provider isn't giving us our speed, or the internet provider, I should say. You didn't get that?
No, so we have two providers for internet, CenturyLink and Midco.
And CenturyLink is the person is a customer of CenturyLink.
Okay.
And they are unhappy with the speed, and they actually provided a conversation, one of those conversations you have through the computer, and it kind of read like a who's on first. And at the end, they
okay.
basically said that they were signing them off and that they weren't going to be able to do anything in this area, so.
Up in Carlos Avery Estates, it says. So I didn't know if we should respond to them or call Century.
This is a subject that's come up before when I've talked to people door to door.
So this is a resident in
Yes.
Carlos Avery Estates.
Where's Carlos Avery?
Since 2016.
It's back in, behind where Mike Wood's house is, back in there. It's back by,
Back in that,
Jodell, yeah.
Jojo?
Yes, off of Joe Durrell. And, you know, this is not the only person that has complained. I mean, he's formally complained, but there have been other people that have talked to me too about it. And, you know, I've talked to Comcast, I've talked to everybody, and nobody.
Yeah, there's only two providers in Columbus, other than you can use your phone as a hotspot. And in Columbus, so we have a cable franchise agreement with Mid-Continent, but the franchise agreement is for cable TV and not internet service. So it doesn't cover, so we don't really have we have a voice in that we can speak as a city and look at services. But we really don't have a voice in the market or the market share where they provide service, because that's a business decision on their part on who they serve. However, we've tried to influence them as best we could when people have called, and I've had numerous conversations with both of my contacts at both companies to make sure that when they do their construction planning the year before, that they perhaps bring service to areas that have very little service or no service. And it is a problem in Columbus because the houses are so far apart that when they look at the financial analysis, they can't make their money back quick enough in order to put the infrastructure in the ground. So what they started to do was they said, okay, if you want service, you pay us upfront X amount of dollars, and you sign up for 3 years or 5 years, and then we'll provide service. I have yet to see a neighborhood come up with, because it's $3,000 to $5,000 a piece in order to do that, of the ones that I've seen. And basically, they don't want to come up with the upfront money. So we've had a struggle in Columbus in order to bring in faster service because there's not enough households in order for the companies to make it cost-effective. So what I've done is, any new developer that comes in, I say to them upfront, you need to talk to a provider because you need to lay the utilities in order to provide internet service. And you need to put that in your business plan, because otherwise they're not going to get internet. Because I think people think, well, of course, I'm in a brand new development, why wouldn't I have internet? Well, that's a bad premise, because you may not have internet. And I worked with Furloughs Acres for years to get service up in that development because there was no service in that development. It took us a lot of time and effort to get CenturyLink to bring in service there. So I will say, yes, it's a problem in Columbus. Not every place in Columbus has service. And recently, we brought service down Lake Drive. But in the Crossways Lake, Furman, Juilliard, I've talked to numerous people in that neighborhood. CenturyLink is the provider. They're out of, I don't know, I don't know all the technical terms, but they don't have any more, they can't put any more people on the service because there's not enough bandwidth to do that. And so it is a problem. I mean, it's a major problem down there. And Mid-Continent stops at Crossways Lake. They do not bring in service. So it's a matter of dollars and how much a neighborhood would be willing to pay up front to bring the service in. Because the city we have no, other than if the city wanted to say, you know what, it's important enough for us to bring in service, and we're gonna give MidCont or CenturyLink $10, $20, $30, $40,000, you know, to bring in service, we don't really have a lot of influence. So it's tough. I've talked to many, many people. I think Jesse's talked to them. I think everyone in the office has talked to people who have had problems. I even have problems with people with phone service. Although I've tried to talk to a number of vendors, two in particular, because what's happening is the copper is to a point where it needs to be replaced. And so every time it rains, they don't have service. So it's just, and I've tried to identify those areas, and they've tried to fix those lines as best they can. So there's some nuances to Columbus that you wouldn't think, because we're in the metro area, that we wouldn't have these problems with internet, but there are some neighborhoods that it's a major problem, to the point where people have told me, I would have never bought this house, or I never would have built this house if I had known I couldn't get internet.
So do you want to call this guy back, or do I have to?
You can forward me his address, I don't need to necessarily, but no, I did not get it.
All right. Okay, so that's that. Let's go to Public Works. Anything happy to add to that?
Mr. Mayor and Council, last week you guys had a workshop and you talked about 135th and Humber. I did a little bit of legwork on that because we talked about potentially having him move a road to the south side of his property. On the south side of that property, where the road potentially could go, there is a mound system, the alternate mound system site, and a retention pond. So that doesn't seem like a very viable option. So with that being said, if anybody would like, we can, after the snow melts and you can actually see the road, we can do a tour down there, just a couple people at a time, because we're not gonna post it as a meeting. But we can go down there and I can kind of show you what the road is and how the development kind of looks down there. So that's one. At that same time, if anybody wanted to go look at Hornsby Street, we could go look at that road as well. So those are the couple of things that I have. I guess if anybody's interested, once the snow melts, I'll just ask. I mean, at that point, we don't need to make any decisions at this point, but, so we plowed snow on Sunday. It's rained pretty much all week. Road restrictions go on Friday. So weather's changing quick. So that's what I have.
I just want to tag on to one thing that Jim brought up, and that is Hornsby Street. After our last meeting and our discussion about Hornsby Street, and tonight, or I think it was the last meeting where you accepted the feasibility study for Hornsby Street, I have contacted Tammy Umdahl, and she is doing the financial analysis for each of the options, and I'll be ready at the next meeting to bring back the financial options to talk about each one, using the different methods that we talked about as far as how we would finance the project in 2020.
Any questions?
Anything else?
No.
So when is a good time for you to take us on the tour?
Well,
Or,
Dennis and I went down to 135th and Humber today,
yeah?
and there's so much snow piled down there that you can't hardly, you're driving through a tunnel. So, I mean, at this point,
Wait till it melts? Okay.
till it melts. I mean, you have to be able to see the road, the ditches, and kind of see the alignment and all of that kind of stuff, which is very, very hard to tell at this point. So I figure once the snow melts, by the next council meeting or something, I can kind of give an update, and maybe we can set up a time at that point.
Can you remind me, was the south side where we were trying to make it more standard width all the way through? Is that, or was that to try to move it back on center? I don't remember why that was coming into play on Hummer.
I was the one that suggested the south side. It was because it went behind the other units and then went directly to the more improved
okay,
units.
okay.
And I said, you could make that kind of an exclusive, I mean, an exclusive driveway for them. And, it was just, he said it would be a lot cheaper to do it that way also, but obviously.
But given, given the obstructions there, it's not very feasible.
Yeah.
And I mean, just looking at that, I talked to Leon today and just kind of asked him what was there and how all that works. I don't know what the exact frontage is, but, I mean, there's some other rules and regulations that would fall into place that might make that a difficult option. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but that is what is in that area at this point. So I figure we might as well look at all options and try to formulate somewhat of.
Well, it won't be so cheap if he has to change all that stuff anyway, so it's.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Keep us posted.
I
All the
will
snow's
do that.
melting.
thank you.
Yep. And number 15, the Public Information Coordinator's Report.
Yeah, just a announcement that next Tuesday, MnDOT is hosting an open house for the bridge project here at Columbus City Hall from 4 to 6 p.m. So they're gonna have some poster boards up, and I think they're gonna be running a PowerPoint as well. Nothing formal, just to go and ask questions and learn more about the project.
Thank you. City Administrator.
I have 2 items on my agenda that I'm going to take out of order. The first one is going to, on your page A1, which is the revised schedule of the city council workshop meetings. During your last workshop, at the end of your meeting, you talked about the possibility of changing your workshop meetings after April 3rd to the 4th Wednesday of the month. And I've changed the calendar from May through December effectively, so the notice is outlined, and I would offer that you review those, and if this is acceptable, then I would need a motion to approve this workshop meeting schedule, and then I will publish it.
Everybody okay with it?
Yes, it's fine with me. Does it work out for your schedule?
That's good with me.
Denny?
Yeah, fine.
Works for me.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the workshop schedule as posted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
The second item on my report, not at the last workshop, but the previous workshop, we talked about the city planning position. I had an opportunity to talk with Hyla Mays, who has been a planner for quite a number of years in the industry. And we talked about the 3 options that I had presented, but then there was a 4th option that I didn't really know whether there would be a company out there that would offer that. So the 4 options, the first one was what we call a minimalist, which is what we had with Dean. And that proposal or that scenario was that the city took care of all the processing of the paperwork. We passed on paperwork to the city planner. The planner then did a completeness letter, they did a review, a report, and then as needed came to meetings. So it was very minimal, it was on an hourly rate, and the city did all of the paperwork with the exception of the reports. Dean generally didn't take phone calls. Phone calls came through the city, and then if there were questions, I would call him with a list of questions and then get back to whether it was a developer or a constituent, whoever was asking those questions, and then I would relay back the information. The second option was hiring someone and having the position at 24 hours and not knowing what kind of experience they would have. We might be facing that particular issue. We might have someone that might have experience in one area and not in another, or no experience at all. We really weren't familiar with the applicant pool, which probably would put us in a little bit of a liability issue when you don't have someone with a lot of experience in not knowing the full gamut of planning. Not a bad thing, but again, there would be that learning curve, and again, put us with a little bit of liability there and probably make me uncomfortable with relying on the information that was given. So I knew that that was going to be an issue if we were going to hire someone in-house. I knew the experience factor was going to be an issue. What I thought is we could go out for the applicant pool, and the first one was hoping that we got someone experienced that only wanted to work part-time, but that was probably wishful thinking on my part. I don't know if that would actually happen. The fourth option, before I go to the third, the fourth option was hiring a consultant to do the whole thing. You know what I mean? They do everything, but that would be very costly, and that really wasn't on my list. The third option that Hyla indicated to me that what might fit with us is if we went out and hired someone, and whether they had a few years or just out of school, then we could hire a consultant that would serve as a mentor. And so this person would then process all the paperwork. They would answer questions at the desk. They would do email and do all of those things. But they would have the opportunity to either use me as a resource as a zoning administrator for code issues and zoning questions. But then we would also have, on a consultant basis, have a senior planner that when they ran into a more complicated application, that they would have that resource. So they would draft the report and then be able to ask questions of a senior planner, and they would review it and then either talk with the developer and get the questions answered, perhaps make a presentation if that person wasn't comfortable, but always having that resource in order to get the information we needed. So when I looked at that option, I thought, that might fit very well for us because it serves the everyday questions, gives them experience, but then they'll have two resources to give us the best advice and best record that we can produce. So with that, I redrafted the city planning position and came up with an ad with that scenario in it because I am recommending the third option. I do think we need someone in the office to be able to answer zoning questions. I also think we need someone in the office to process the paper. We do have a fair amount of applications and work in that area. So I do think the 24 hours is appropriate for the position. And I think that we'll be able to work with, and we will interview consultants to see what senior planner could guide them and one we felt comfortable with. So with that, I'll answer any questions. I've come up with a hourly rate schedule for the position that I think is fair. I have asked others whether they think the wage scale is reasonable, and they said that it was. I think if we go out for, and the approval that I'm looking for is to go out for an ad to see what the pool brings. So you're not actually hiring someone right now. You're just making a motion to have me go out for posting the position. The ad that I did draft is the position number 3 and scenario that I just explained to you. Feedback, questions?
Just curious, how many cities of under 5,000 have city planning technicians? What do the cities usually do at this size? We have a small town here, a small city, but.
Any one of when I talked to Hyla, she said that at their company, it's any one of the 4 scenarios that you can pick. So there are some cities that just hire a senior planner and do exactly what Dean did, but you still had me. So you still had a city person doing all of the paper. And right now, that's one of my problems. I don't have the time to process all of the paper that's necessary for each of the development requirements, not to mention all the questions that come across the counter for zoning. You do need some knowledge of the zoning code and zoning rules to answer questions about zoning. You can memorize the code, but you do have to have some idea of land use, applicability, It's kind of like the building code. Not everyone can administer the building code if you don't understand all the rules.
So you would start them out at $22 an hour? 22.38
You know,
or thereabouts?
if we were lucky enough, in our pool to get an experienced planner that is just working part-time because for whatever reason, they only want to work part-time, they probably wouldn't accept $22.38 an hour, because that is, for a senior planner, it's just not the going rate. You most likely will have to go up the scale, which is why I put 22.38 to 24.26, knowing that, because when you post, you have, usually they ask you what's the starting rate, or what the scale is. The scale is a 20% scale, and that is in line with the Pay Equity Act, where you start a wage and then, usually it's 5 years, ours have historically been 7, and it's a 20% increase from your starting wage to your high point. Again, I think a senior planner won't take the 22, they may be happy with 25.
So if you don't find any planners and you have to rely on Hyla? PKDA or who's?
That will be strictly under, if, at the end of the day, if we post this and we don't get a pool at all, because there's just, everyone has jobs and there's just no one in the pool. We'll go out for RFPs, and then historically, our professional services are interviewed by the full council. So I would draft an RFP, which is a request for proposals. I will outline that I'm looking for someone to do X amount of work, and then they'll come back with proposals. Because the other option that I didn't talk about was hiring a group, and they provide services to us, but in that service, they come into the office either once a week or once every 2 weeks. They spend time in the office, process paper, and answer some of the phone calls. The reason why I don't like that scenario is it's very costly, because you're hiring a consultant at $130,
That was my
$40,
question.
or $50,000, or $100 rather. So if you don't have a pool of people, you can do it just with a consultant, but it's a lot more money.
What was the price again?
Well, the dollar figures that I was getting is, it was $130, $140, or $150 an hour, depending on who is doing the services.
As opposed to 22 to 25, 26, 27? Yeah?
Yeah,
But then they're being mentored by somebody who has to be paid too.
yes. There would be, you would be paying for hours, but not nearly as many hours.
And at a lower rate also. Wasn't that the part of the proposal?
So the mentoring person, that would be a senior, senior planner. And again, we would negotiate the rate, and we buy bulk hours, because Hyla said that those cities that you negotiate saying that you guarantee them 5 hours a month or whatever it is, they then will negotiate, well, the first 5 hours is at this rate, so maybe it's $80 an hour. And then the next 5 hours is X amount of dollars. And so they have different rate schedules for what type of services they provide. But again, that would be through an RFP service, and we would have to write that. And then you would put those different nuances in the RFP saying, well, what would your rate scale would be? And then you would interview all of those consultants, and then you would pick one. I mean, historically, that's what we've always done with consultants.
And if you had a good candidate, a sharp candidate, who could pick this up to speed in 6 months or a year, then you don't need the $100 an hour advisor.
As they gain experience, throughout years, that's what happens, you get a person up to speed. Whether they stay or not is, who knows what will happen. But again, it's a way for us to get to where we want to be through this time when we have a fair amount of applications to process.
And Dean is not coming back, right?
Dean is
So
not
what we
coming
have to
back.
get out of the money that we used to spend for Dean is we have to have this person plus a mentor. in your best guess, is that going to be, equal? Or is this going to be?
It will never be equal because we paid Dean, you know what I mean? And we paid him on an hourly basis. We got reimbursed from, as far as developer costs, we got reimbursed. And yes, there was some money, I want to say it was 10, 12, maybe even $15,000 where we had city services where he was doing ordinance work or things that, you know what I mean, for us. And then you had me. And I'm your, you know what I mean, I'm the one that the hours that I put in are the ones that you're replacing. And so you can't double bill me. So that's, you know what I mean, that's the problem. So this is new. So the cost that you're seeing for this 24 hours is a new cost, where you're only probably going to pick up $10,000 of I won't say a savings, but a dollar for dollar, because that $10,000 was always for city questions. The developer fees, I've talked with Jake a little bit about this, and we really haven't nailed down how we can recoup developer costs without having a consultant. You know what I mean? I'm not really sure how that would work, whether, because we take an escrow now in, and I don't know, can you set up a billable hours on a application when they're employed?
Mr. Mayor, Council, you could, that's fairly unusual. What the larger cities do that have, 2, 3, 4 people in the office is they just charge a higher application fee, and they offset the cost there. And they do, I've seen reports where they try and demonstrate that their planning department or their building department in particular are paying for themselves, so, in the main. But there's usually there are some projects, as you've noted, the comprehensive plan, zoning code amendments, that are truly city projects and aren't billed back.
So that would be a change in our fee schedule. So if that was the structure, because now what we do is we charge a $200 fee and a $1,500 escrow. So now you would say, I would say that it's more like a $2,000 fee or application fee in order to do that.
Without the escrow or with the escrow?
That would be, and then we wouldn't take, you know what I mean, we wouldn't take an escrow for the planner, because we would have to pay the engineer and the attorney out of that money too.
And one of the main differences is you can ask a developer to replenish an escrow, but you wouldn't ask them to make a second
Right.
fee payment.
Right.
So we'd have to probably monitor it over time and adjust. And I think if I may make one more comment, in the cities that do this, there's a lot more gradation between the fees. So, they try and understand that, for a simple renewal, it's not going to be the same as the initial CUP. Some sort of, even sometimes it's based upon size of development and property. So there's a number of ways to look at that if you move away from the escrow concept.
See, today, you have an application fee, and we provide, we process the paper, and that does not cover, we don't recoup our costs there. And then each of the 3 consultants that review applications, if they need to review them, are all billed back to the person, to the applicant. And whether it exceeds the escrow, they owe us money. If it's below the escrow, then we give a refund back.
Would you be able to give out refund? So you charge them $2,500 for their fee, for their application. And if you're $500 over, can you refund that or not? Is there a mechanism for the small people, subdividing one lot or something like that?
You'd probably have different fee schedules, I would assume, for small versus large.
Yeah, I think the difference is the size of the project sometimes is a determinant. I think what we would perhaps look at is some sort of blend between fees and escrow, and then have some discretion to waive the escrow for a very simple, like a home occupation. So you'd set it up so everybody has to pay a fee, and some escrow, but in some cases, there'd be discretion administratively to waive the escrow where we don't expect to have charges. It's going to take a little bit of thinking, I think, on your part and ours.
Yeah, and not every application is equal. You know, different properties have different issues with them, so, so it really is tough to, unless I saw the application or saw what it was going to take, that would be really hard for me to say, oh, no, we're not going to need the attorney on this one, because as soon as I said that, no doubt in my mind, we'll need the attorney on that one. So I would say sometimes it's hard to know which ones are the more difficult ones and which ones are the more simpler ones. Because sometimes even a one-lot subdivision can become complicated for one reason or another.
So I have two questions on this. One is, I think when you and I discussed this, one of the options was trying to find somebody like a recent grad who maybe doesn't have the 1 to 3 years experience, and then partner them with a mentor. So I'm wondering whether or not you want to leave the 1 to 3 years, because that's going to limit your pool a little bit. You could say you prefer it, but to require it, you might be missing out on, a sharp grad who might do just fine as long as they had a mentor. And then my second question is whether or not you want to put in the posting somewhere that you have the option of pairing them with a mentor, so that, somebody that might actually really be an appealing opportunity for someone who might not otherwise consider this position. They knew that they were going to have some professional mentoring as part of it.
Yeah, and I didn't know whether I wanted to, in the third bullet, I wasn't sure how to phrase it, because I put facilitating the pre-development review process to prepare draft reports for review by myself or the planning consultant if necessary. I wasn't quite sure whether mentoring or how to frame that, but that's where I was going with that. So we can fine tune some language there, but that's where that was going.
Okay.
Because there are some applications that, they're simple enough that I'm going to be able to review the report and they won't have to go anywhere else, where others, they're far too complicated and I would need someone to look at it. This does not supplant our engineer review or an attorney review for other things. This is just for planning. I did check in also, so the two schools that have planning programs is Mankato and the U, and at the U it is the Humphrey Institute. My understanding is that the Humphrey Institute is more broad and concept and more comp planning and long-range planning, whereas Mankato more has a program more for cities and a smaller developments. It doesn't mean that we would go from one to the other, we'd still post at both schools. My intern from a couple years ago was at the U. However, he was in graduate school and he wanted to be a transportation planner, so wouldn't have been an exact match. But as an intern, he did a really nice job for us for what we were doing at the time.
So what about the 1 to 3 year requirement? You might want to,
I put 0 to 3. I'm not
Okay.
exactly sure if that's the exact way to put it, but I'll try to verbalize that in the minimum requirements.
do your postings sometimes have preferred? Because you could just put the 1 to 3 as preferred requirement, and that way they know that you'd be leaning in that direction, but if you had someone who didn't have any, they wouldn't be screened out.
Okay.
What would an experienced person get? So it's just talking about 1 to 3 preferred years of planning and zoning. How do you say something, semi-retired, welcome, or something like that?
I think the preferred does it, because it says that on either end of that experience, somebody could come in.
We don't want to be accused of age discrimination. So Elizabeth, do you need a motion, or what would you like?
So, there's one other item, looking at page A2. So what I'm looking for is two things tonight. One is, recommending, and this one's, it's more of, I'm recommending a position to be established in order to look at an applicant pool. If the applicant pool doesn't come out to me, we'll rethink it and we'll rework it. But right now, I'd like to see what the applicant pool will bring. The other one is, I had, last year, in last year's budget, I had anticipated that we had hired a deputy treasurer in March of last year, and I knew that there was going to be a fairly long learning curve in that position, and that fund accounting is one of those areas in accounting that there's not a lot of experience in the pool, especially in a small sector city like we have. And so we take on people who have experience in accounting, and then we teach them how to do fund accounting. But when they first start, they can't do everything, and so you have to grow the position over time. And so in this case, I knew the 24 hours would work, but then over time, I knew that we were going to have to add more hours, because what happened is our accountant left, and then we had a consultant service, and I took on some of the accounting functions. We got very busy. We went from 250 building permits to 535 permits in that year. There was a lot of processing of paper that year, plus the planning. So we just exploded in that year, and then last year it was the same. So I need to delegate back some of the accounting requirements that were in that position. So I had anticipated adding hours, and so the other thing I'm recommending is that the deputy treasurer position goes from 3 days to 4 days, so that would be 26 to 31 hours. And in this case, he would work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so my motion is that we approve the increase in hours for the deputy treasurer position, which is already budgeted for, that is in the budget, and then approving me posting the position for the city planner. And I took out the development portion of it as listed in the March outline.
Someone like to start making motions? So that's two separate motions?
Yep, as outlined in A2, there's two separate motions. The first motion would be effective immediately.
So I would move to approve the recommendation of the city administrator to change the deputy treasurer hours from 26 to 31 hours per week.
I'm not familiar with, I've only worked in the.
You need a
private-
second first.
Okay.
Sorry.
Second.
All right, and discussion.
Okay, I have been in the, only in the public, private sector, I should say. And so I don't understand how the benefits work on that sort of thing. So when we go from 26 hours to 31, does that change anything?
So in our city, all of our benefits are prorated. And so if you don't work 40 hours, let's say, I'll do easy math. So if you work 40 hours and let's say we have a holiday, the holiday is generally 8 hours. If you only work 20 hours, you're only going to get 4 hours. So it's always, those benefits are always prorated. So whether it's vacation, sick, holidays, those are all prorated, with the exception of part-time people on holidays. If you don't work on a Monday, you don't get a holiday pay on Monday. So you have to work on the day, you have to work your regular scheduled hours on a holiday to get holiday pay. The only benefit that changes, and that's because of our healthcare carrier, is in order to be eligible for medical benefits, you have to work over 30 hours. So that's the only benefit that is very strict, in that we accepted their policy when we went on to the Public Employees Insurance Program, and that's one of the guidelines, that you have to work over 30. So in this case, the position would go from not having health benefits to being eligible to have health benefits, being that it's 31 hours.
But you've budgeted for that increase, correct? Yeah.
The position prior to this had benefits.
Anybody else have questions? If not, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right, and how about another on the second point?
Want me to do it, I'll do that one too. So I would move to accept the recommendation to post a job position of city planning and development technician as listed in the March 2019 outline and as amended as we discussed.
Second.
Any discussion, anyone?
I'm just eliminating the development part of it.
Yeah.
So it's a city planning technician. Originally, I thought that there might be some opportunity for them to be in economic development, but it clouded the whole thing and it didn't work.
Okay,
And this is basically just find out if there's a pool of candidates that will apply or see who applies?
This gives me the authorization to post the position.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right,
I have nothing further.
right below that on the same page, sorry, everybody, before we go. So this is a personnel, Public Works, 3 full-time employees.
Oh, are you talking about the FTEs? Mm-hmm. So what I do each time that we look at personnel, I give you the overall, and FTE is full-time equivalents. So Public Works has 3 full-time equivalents in that department. In the building department, you have Leon that works 40, and then Rochelle works 6, and then Rochelle works 10, and Jeff works 6, and they're admin techs, but they process all the paper for the building department. So those 1.4 FTEs are supported by the building department, so their building permit fees pays for that. In admin, I have myself, then Lori, Jesse. 31 hours would be the deputy treasurer position. The 24 hours is the new position that we just talked about, planning and whether or not that actually comes to be. The 10 and 6, I share Rochelle and Jeff with the admin department, so we split their wages. And so it comes out to, if we were to add the 24 hours, 9 FTEs.
There we go, thank you. Anything else, Elizabeth?
I have nothing further.
And we already have the workshop schedule. All right, then we're nearly done. Does anyone else have anything to add? If not, I'll call for a motion to, yes.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.